Oh, that cup looked like a trash can in the. Hello, we're here. The Inglorious Pastords.
The Inglorious Pastords here, back again. Thanks for listening.
I'm Bruce.
Watching. I'm Roger.
And
we're brothers.
Probably know that, unless this is their first look at the Pastords.
And we're former pastors.
Yes.
Thus the Pastords.
And one of us is still doing ministry.
Let's see.
We'll let our listeners guess which one. Let's see. eBay man or counselor? It's a tough one, folks.
Yeah, well, you're that person. There are religious, spiritual activities, and then there are other things that are non-spiritual that can't be pleasing to God. I think that's a mistake. I do everything for the glory of God.
Whatever your hand finds to do.
Even when it's selling trinkets to people who have too much money and too much time.
That's a sad thing. Hey, by the way, I had a first this week.
Oh, excellent.
You ready? It was my third time to be tested for COVID. That's a first. I've never been tested 3 times for COVID.
And your fourth will be that next first.
I hope there's not another next first. That would be a fourth first.
I just hope you keep getting negatives.
This is what I realized about statistics, because I was watching the Masters Sunday, and they have all these statistics, and I'm like, you can just create statistics out of any information. For instance, this one guy from Australia had 4 rounds in the 60s. First time anyone has ever had 4 rounds in the 60s.
Right.
But you know what else? What other record he broke?
He came in second.
Yeah, first one to have 4 rounds in the 60s and lose
a major.
So it's like, you can just create statistics all day about that. This is a first.
No.
Yeah.
No, when I saw that one, actually, that one was startling.
So you know why that makes a first for Dustin Johnson? You ready? This is a true statistic. He's the first person not to lose to a person who was the first person to have 4 rounds in the 60s at Augusta. Did I say that right?
It's
dizzying, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's remarkable.
Yeah. So that's why I had my COVID first. I've been negative all 3 times, which is great. I've got a big trip this weekend with 13 ladies, and I would have hated to have to have postponed that.
Oh.
Hated.
I won't go there.
I'm doing lots of ladies retreats right now.
That's part of your true ministry.
It's part of my ministry. Do you sell any eBay stuff to women?
Oh yeah. But not at the same percentages that.
Do you put encouraging notes in there too?
No, I don't put any notes.
We're going to do an entire podcast on how to turn your average job into a ministry. You can pay it forward.
Well, the reality is that isn't the truth.
It's true.
Everyone can serve, love, honor, make a difference in whatever line of work they're in.
I realize I'm chuckling more
Hopefully
than
you're not discouraging people.
No, I've said for years that everybody's in ministry, regardless of what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, everyone is in.
Well, talk about that. I mean, so when you say you've said that for years, what is that?
So
because I think that's important.
Right. If Jesus says to the most important command, which he says 1 and 2 are the same, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I can do every day, thus making that ministry. In other words, I'm fulfilling the law of Christ, the command of Christ. And it's interesting, every time that whole love your neighbor as yourself thing, this gets me, this is off topic. But every time I go to sell a vehicle, because I'm selling 2 vehicles right now, a Trailblazer and an Avalanche, I feel compelled to tell them every single thing wrong with it. And guess what it does? They never call back. Well, I mean, it's just true. If you're going to say, well, it probably needs ball joints and it's going to need an alignment up front, there seems to be some kind of vibration in the rear end. I don't know what that, I mean, once you cover everything, they're like, thanks, but no thanks.
Don't call us.
But
we'll call you.
But I realized that is the way of Christ. If I was going to buy a vehicle, I would want to know everything that person knew that was wrong with it or potentially wrong with it.
No, and I love that about you. And it really, it highlights just the simple little ways sometimes we we just don't think truly what it means do unto others as you would have them do to you. So it's where I might think there's this part of me that probably in selling things or whatever is, if they ask a question, I could tell them this or whatever.
Let the buyer beware.
Well, I'm not lying about anything.
Right,
sure. But the reality, what you're saying, which I do think is more the way of Jesus than I typically live, that you really would. I'm getting better at points, but that I think that's true. You would, and I've seen that for me. Even now in my eBay negotiations, I'm buying from people,
sure,
whatever. Well, again, I'm putting myself in the shoes of other people more often, and so now I'm in different ways more trying to find a win for both of us in a sale, because I've always said, if I get a killer deal, just some spectacular deal, well, somebody else really took a pretty big hit. They either didn't know what they had. No, every now and then it's okay. They don't care. I just want to get rid of this thing. It doesn't.
Which would be me most of the time. I just don't care.
Right. So, sometimes that's it. But I'm trying to look more
Steinway
into the situation and what people, and I've just at different points, I've had a couple of occasions literally where I asked someone what would you sell that for? And they give me a number, and I actually give them a little higher than that. I mean, in other words, because I'm like, I think you really underestimated that. And again, it can be a case by case basis, but it is that thing I'm trying in my best moments to, love somebody like I would want, to treat people like I would want to be treated. And that,
So it's interesting. Our culture would say, let the buyer beware and let the seller be shrewd. But I think Jesus would flip that and say, let the seller beware and let the buyer be shrewd. In other words, I love what you're talking about, even giving someone something more than they want. So even when I'm buying a vehicle, unless there's something wrong with it, I don't try to talk people down.
Yeah.
Here's why. If they're wanting, let's say $5,500 for the vehicle, then I know that's what they want to get out of it. In other words, I'm like, when I put a vehicle online, I want to get out of it what I've got on there. And that's not always the case. Sometimes I'll put it a little higher because I know people are going to want to come down. And that's fine. But it's interesting. The way of Jesus calls us to think through all of those things. Yeah. Let the seller beware. I want to be careful. I'm not trying to take advantage of another person on either side, even as a buyer. So it's been those times, in our work with people that are sometimes been very marginalized by culture. They'll come into an asset, whether that's an appliance or something like that, and they're like, "Hey, I'll take $50 for it," because they just need quick cash. They're trying to make rent this week, and I know you've done the same, and I've gone, "No, I can't do that. It's worth more than that. Here, I'll give you $200 for this washing machine or air conditioner or whatever it is," because we know yes, it would be a great deal for us, but it wouldn't be a great deal for them. And this is another thing. This leads into what I want to talk about today.
Okay.
But the whole idea behind the idea of making America great, and if that's important to someone, what does that look like? Yeah. And one of our leaders would describe that as it's a good deal for America. We're gonna make sure we only make good deals for us.
Yep.
And even when I was talking to my son Zach about this week, he was like, is some of this stuff should we be using tariffs on China, or should we just cut them off entirely? And are they taking jobs from Americans? And I said, well, they could be. I said, but here's the thing: I want jobs for Americans, and I want jobs for the Chinese.
Right.
So my decision-making paradigm about buying something or whatever is not based on, well, let's take away from American jobs, because all of us need jobs. And it really, I realized it caused Zach to think about, oh, yeah, we care about the Chinese having jobs. We care about Syrians having jobs. We care. In other words, in one sense, the gospel of Jesus Christ only allows me to have a worldview, but not a national view. It's this idea that if I treat your neighbor as you want to be treated, do for others as you want. And we've talked before, that's not a passive thing. Didn't just say, don't do something to someone else you wouldn't want them to do to you, or don't screw somebody else. But he said, do for someone else. So it's this active thing that he's calling us into. So I thought about even what makes any country great. And I think it's serving, and it's doing for others what you would want done for you. In other words, if we expand the way of Christ into a worldview, and I'm just letting our listeners know, this is where I am. I can't separate worldview from politics. I can't separate worldview from friendships. I can't separate worldview from enemies. Jesus didn't give us room for that.
And that's the key. Because we love and follow Jesus, and Jesus was clear about this.
Well, and Jesus, I'm going to say arguably the most famous thing Jesus ever said.
Oh, God.
John 3:16. You realize Jesus is speaking there.
Mm-hmm.
For God so loved the United States. For God so loved the world.
Yeah.
That's just profound. I think we just read over that, but God so loved the world. So that's why I embrace this worldview that says, and it particularly in a much more global economy, global world system, our concern is broader.
Well, it's where, as I'm listening to you again, not just Bruce's opinion, not just that this was a fundamental thing of Jesus, even when because we've laughed in the past about how often it's both troubling and encouraging how often Jesus' disciples were arguing over who was the greatest.
Yes.
At least 3 different times, including the night Jesus would die.
Yes.
They're kind of figuring out the pecking order and which of them is the greatest. And, Jesus has to be, we've been having this conversation ever since I've met you and known you, but it's this encouraging thing that they keep reverting back to that just like we do. And I see that in America, and I see that in me.
Yes.
Again,
I see that in you, always trying to be the greater pastor.
Always.
I'm sorry, you were saying something important.
Yes, yes. But Jesus says, okay, if you're going to talk about greatness, if you're going to talk about greatness, and of course, he's just really going to blow up where they're going. He's going to, well, then it's who's the chief servant? Who's the one who's giving up? Who's the one? So, in that context, he says, you know how it works in the world. People are looking for titles where they can control people.
Power.
They're looking for power. They're looking for where I get to be making the calls. When James and John come to Jesus and they want a throne when you enter your kingdom, we want to be on the right hand of they're thinking power, influence.
And they used cultural power they sent mom in.
Well,
it's just an interesting narrative.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And I always love the fact that when the others found out about it,
they were indignant.
We
would never argue. And what you're talking about, the night that Jesus was betrayed, it's interesting. I wonder if Jesus ever rolled his eyes, because that was the 3rd time.
Right.
And said something like this, not so with you.
Right. Well, or did he say, did you guys miss that whole...
I don't know if you missed what I've been saying for the last 3 years.
No. When I was washing your feet a short while ago.
Right.
Jesus, this was his whole life. He illustrated. So that very night, he was showing them what greatness does. Greatness washes people's feet.
Right, because right before he washed their feet, it said, knowing that all authority had been given to him. So he's the most powerful person in the room. Andy Stanley does a great talk on that, but he's the most powerful person in the room. And immediately he disrobes, takes the posture and position of a servant, and washes their...
Right, so literally get away from the table. The table was the place of honor, and then around the table, there would be seats of honor, whatever. No, he grabs the towel. Again, that's the servant's attire. He steps away from the table, and the table again was the place that's, a place at the table. So he gets away, and so he's serving. And so just this contrast, this amazing contrast that's there with them at some point, knowing who is even in the greatest in the room, they're arguing which of them is the greatest. And it's like you've missed the whole point.
Not so with you.
Right. But still, where I see myself going back to that is I still find myself looking for influence, power, control, all the, again, money represents control. It represents options.
Yep.
That's why it's hard to give it away. Fame, people knowing you, knowing certain kinds of people. That's power. That's influence. I have more options, and I find myself going for those things rather than serving, looking how I can build other people up. What can I do to raise that person's platform? What can I do to increase that person's control? And we've talked about
transferring power.
Transfer is almost always substitution. I have to give away some of mine for you to get it. So when I praise you, or what, I mean, again, I'm
right. It's not reciprocity. It's substitution. That's an interesting way of understanding it, because power often brokers a deal based on reciprocity.
Okay.
I'll give you some of my power, but I want some of your power. Oh, we'll do this thing. We'll even do this. We'll even offer your country aid, but we're going to want this. We got a favor in our back pocket. But substitution is different. I'm giving up power that I'm not getting back so that you can have that. Now, sometimes our power is it's sort of a regenerating source in that sense. When we give influence, but it's not demanding reciprocity. So I'm going to give you influence, but I want you to then give me. And that's what I think we have to get away from.
Yeah.
Jesus talked about an enemy being a person. He said you would loan to them or give to them and not expect repayment.
Yeah.
I'm like, when I loan money to my friends or my enemies, I'm expecting repayment. That's the term loan. But Jesus uses that term. It's the idea of not demanding repayment. It's because I think what Jesus is referring to, in the moment that you loan someone money and then they choose not to, or they're unable to repay it, they've become your enemy, and Jesus says, well, don't demand it back.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Of course, the bottom line of all that too, I think about, it's God's anyway. And he wants me to be generous, and he wants me to loan. And but this also is speaking to the focus is supposed to be on others. How often are we just thinking about his benefit, her advantage, what this could mean for that person, how this could benefit? There's a fundamental shift. The water we've swum in all our lives, the culture tends to say, oh, of course, look out for yourself. So again, with any deal, well, of course, your first focus is going to be you, and then, but you also want. No, I don't think the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus actually is start with, out of your love for God, start with what does that person need? What does that? So now, if I come back to where you were talking about, at a national level, isn't greatness measured by how great a deal you're making for other countries? I'm talking about, if I'm just talking about the way of Jesus.
Yes.
Okay, we're working with Mexico.
Oh.
Mexico can barely hold a candle to us in terms of natural resources, economic power, whatever. But doesn't the way of Jesus mean what's going to benefit them?
I thought you would say behoove there. Doesn't it behoove us?
It's a good word. You've been using a lot of words like that, reciprocity thing, and are you reading the dictionary lately?
I am. I have nothing better to do when I'm waiting for my COVID tests to come in.
You're just scanning the dictionary.
But you're right. Doesn't it make sense, the way of Christ, say that we're looking for the interest of others? Here's something I thought about while you were saying that, and I'm sorry I interrupted, but I've got to say this before it leaves my brain.
No, say it. No.
So we're the most powerful country in the world, arguably.
Yeah.
But Jesus didn't say that made us the greatest country.
No.
In fact, it could be the antithesis of greatness, depending on how we use that power.
No. Everything any one of us has, and this is where we come to our country, but then we come down to just you, me,
Bruce.
Right. Is all we have comes from God. It belongs to him. There's a way he wants it used. And he says, you're going to find the most joy, actually, and you're going to be closer to the person I made you to be when you're looking out for your brother or sister. And again, we think brother or sister, your neighbor, not simply even people you like or whatever, but you're going to look at the benefit of others. So you and I are getting closer to Jesus when we are looking at that person we're negotiating with, looking at that person we're trying to make a deal with, looking at that neighbor who's maybe difficult and giving us trouble, looking at anyone and saying, what do they need? What's going on? What's broken that I might be able to help? What are they encountering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just used a term there that I haven't thought about. You said you're getting closer to being the person I created you to be, or I designed you to be. It's interesting. The marring effect of sin and living in a world that is full of sin has taken us away from, I always call it, because but culturally it can be misunderstood. I always say the best version of yourself. And then I'm quick to add, by God's design.
Yeah.
Because I love the idea of us living out the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
By God's design. In other words, according to God's design. But when we live this royal law, this singular command of love in the kingdom, loving as we love ourselves, it is the fulfillment of all of the law.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, when I've been sharing this a lot more at weddings, about the singular law of love in the kingdom, and even it's interesting, the kingdom being introduced profoundly with Jesus's first miracle at a wedding. But it's this idea, I can't remember 365 laws. I can't even remember the 10 commandments most of the time. I could probably give you 8 or 9 of them, but it's sometimes, I forget those things. But I can always remember, love God, love people. And then the implications of that are huge.
Yeah.
I have to apply that across the board over and over and over again. But it simplifies my life. All right. Do you see what for our listeners, you can't see, I've got a piece of paper in my hand. Roger, do you know what this is?
I don't, Bruce.
It's not a letter from our many listeners. So,
is it a letter from one of our critics?
No, not that I know of. Well, I've been just for funsies. I've been reading a bunch in Daniel and Revelation, just for funsies, because after reading in Matthew 24:25, where Jesus talks about how it's going to be in the end times and all of that, I realize the end times has been going for a long time. But you'll love this, and I want you to speak to this.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. You've been talking about, why is truth important?
Okay.
So this is interesting. So this is in Daniel chapter 8, and it's talking about these kings that are coming to power, and then they're being deposed, and they're coming to power. So just like we have presidential elections, or we have kings that come to power, and then in some places dictators, and it's just fascinating. They come and go, and Marlene and I have been watching The Crown, and we're watching the prime minister change, and right now Margaret Thatcher's in, but then as I read on Wikipedia, she's eventually not in. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. So,
you're killing it for me. I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah. So
Margaret,
these kings are coming and going, and then one of them is going to overthrow these 3 kings. And privately, I've talked to you about the little horn with the big mouth that's speaking boastfully or tweeting. Listen to this. And this is speaking of this little horn. It says, in the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, this is Daniel 8:23, a stern-faced king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy the mighty men and the holy people. Listen to this, verse 25. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. And when they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. This thing of, in our culture right now, and it's been in every culture, since Daniel's time,
Yes.
He will cause deceit to prosper. And as I was showering this morning, I was just thinking through that. I was thinking, even when Jesus came to earth, and he's before Pilate, he's been betrayed, he's before Pilate. Pilate's like, you realize I have the power to take your life or set you free. And Jesus is like, well, you wouldn't have any power unless it was given you from heaven.
Yeah.
And he said, well, basically, who are you? And Jesus says, I have come to testify to the truth.
Yeah.
And Pilate was so used to this world of intrigue and deceit. He goes, what is truth?
Right.
And I just wanted you to talk to us, because I know you've done this on your Facebook Lives, about the importance of truth. And it is, truth has consequences. It's not truth or consequences.
Well, it's interesting, the contrast that comes up there, even in that. And we're talking about a thing that really everything we've talked about has a thread together, is we're so often, again, looking for our advantage. And that means very often we'll
Not
make
being
truth
truth.
what we want it to be. Right.
We'll
In other words,
change the narrative.
I'll say what I need to say. And I think what's so serious is because it's why God in his grace had such strong words about integrity and not bearing false witness. And when I look at bearing false witness, especially referring to lying or deceiving the public square, leaders, whether church leaders, political leaders, whatever, government, those kind of things. Again, we've just gotten used to, you just say what you need to say in the moment. You say what's convenient. You don't say, you color the truth. And everyone knew that's how it worked. In fact, in that context, you realize the Jewish leaders had come to Herod, had come to the Roman rulers, and he knew they were coming out of jealousy. He knew the stories didn't all match. He knew they were saying to him what they wanted him to hear. He's against Rome and he's an insurrectionist. Well, when Pilate examined him, well, there was nothing that he was picking up there. He realized, okay, that's not the real story here. So again, everyone's playing loose. Everyone's Pilate's going to send him to Herod. Because he wants to
increase his power. It's a little bit like Pilate was looking for Herod to have a favor. Here's the deal, because Herod had said he wanted to see him, but Jesus basically said, I'm not going to see you.
Right. It'd
be like being invited to the president's mansion with the White House and then opting not to. So Jesus says, no, tell that fox I'll be in Jerusalem after 3 days when I think it was talking about being killed, because certainly no prophet can die outside Jerusalem.
Right.
It's an interesting thing. So Pilate was increasing his power by, hey, I'm going to give a little favor to Herod, but he was also relinquishing responsibility.
No, he wanted to be off the hook.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's what I'll do. I'll do this
favor.
Here's why I'm doing it, Herod. Because I love you so much, because I admire you so much, I'm going to let you make the call here.
And it's interesting. They became friends on that day. That was the favor, even though they had been enemies up to that time.
Right.
So I'm trying to even remember how that narrative went. So Herod sends it back to Pilate with the word, what?
Well,
nothing.
He won't say anything.
Yeah.
Because what it says about when he goes to Herod had hoped he'd do a miracle.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So Herod hoped
play the fiddle for me.
Right. Do some, conjure up something. So Herod asked him several questions, and Jesus never
said
answered.
Not a word.
So in other words, again, he's just looking authority and the way, all these things in the face, and then he's just, no, there's nothing I have to say. There's nothing. And so Herod, at some point, it would seem, because he's not as interesting as I thought he was.
He seems to be a mute.
Right. He doesn't say anything. He won't do a miracle. I'm just going to send the clown back to you. I don't, it was not. But in all, well, you were trying to circle back, I guess, to what you were talking about. You cannot play loose with the truth without having substantial consequences. And the lost trust that happens.
Right.
And what I realize now, even in our culture, is truth is so lightly valued. Everybody knows. People say what you want them to hear. Everyone just knows. And it's come down now in politics. People think that about the media. Basically, it's just, you're going to say the thing that's convenient for you. People know, even with the media, they know a sensational story is better than an average one.
Well, think about it. And if the goal of reporting is to share the news, that's one thing. But if the goal of reporting is to get views or readership or likes or viral videos
or the first scoop,
well, then you can you can play fast and loose with the truth.
Now I have feel the pull to manufacture stories. Now I feel this. So someone says something, I can even know. I know that wasn't their. Wasn't their intent.
I can take it out of context.
I can take it. I can say something. I can frame it in my story in a way.
And so that's the other thing about about not telling the truth when you're telling the truth. It's what I would call the technical truth. For instance, let's go back to the car sale illustration. So I could say with my Avalanche, well, I'm not a mechanic, so I can't say with any authority what it actually needs or doesn't need.
Right.
Because I don't know.
Yep.
I haven't gotten under there to take off a ball. I don't even know what a ball joint is. Okay. So I can't argue that it's got to have a ball joint. So I could be technically telling the truth by not telling them that, but lying at the same time.
And it happens all the time. In fact, at a level where I think most people would say, well, of course you do that. That's not even, they would be raising why you would do anything different.
They might think you're an idiot not to.
It's so common.
Right.
But the cost.
Think about that. Yeah. When he caused deceit to prosper, it becomes so common. Think about it. Everybody's doing it.
Well, and this is where I can look. It's why I don't have to point to any particular leader.
No.
I can look at our current president and say he is very loose with the truth, and reality is what he wants it to be on any given time, and he'll say things. But I'll see this time and time and time with other political leaders, with other leaders in the public square. I see it all the time. But even at the personal level, we're talking about. Well, of course, we say what people want to hear. We talk about white lies, or I shaded this, or there's always a cost, and the substantial cost is trust and relationships. Because now, I had the other day, I think I had a post on Facebook regarding this, maybe a live video, and I remember just one of my friends commenting and said, the problem is I don't know who to trust anymore.
Right.
And this is the thing. Once everyone has bought
Truth
into
eroded. Just
saying whatever you want, whatever's beneficial for you, whether it's true or not, the consequence is always trust is gone. And when trust goes away, relationships blow up. But then really everything we love.
But even things like economies fall.
Yes.
The whole idea of if the American person doesn't trust government and that expands and doesn't trust the dollar or the strength of it's an interesting thing. I remember learning this in economics when I was in 9th grade. I didn't go much further than that, but I remember that. But it's this idea that if confidence in the gold standard or whatever else erodes, people will stop using it transactionally or stop taking it. Or they'll say that loaf of bread is $6,000 because it's been so devalued. This is the importance of truth.
Well,
truth has far-reaching consequences.
Right. You say the same thing, let's say, with the stock market. We look at in our American culture how critical the stock market is and investing. But we understand this is why you need to go after insider trading. You need to go at if there are people
because it erodes trust.
If once people, because see, someone thinks, they're not doing anything. I'm doing something under the table. I got some information and I'm acting on that, and that's fine. It won't hurt anybody. But of course, it is, because you realize the stock market eventually goes away. If people believe it's rigged, it's the same way we see in betting, in gambling. If games are being fixed, again,
I never thought about it. It erodes trust in the whole system.
No, it erodes trust in the whole system.
In one sense, healthy systems have to have trust to be effective. That's not the right word, but to be a healthy system.
Even if something as fun as we think about the NFL and how much fun it is and so on. But if we learn that games are fixed, if we learn at some point that there are players that are throwing games, if we learn that there are umps or referees that are deliberately, you realize this is all forms of dishonesty. Someone's not playing as hard. They got paid off.
Right.
White Sox scandal, whatever. They're deceiving for personal gain. Again, if you have a referee, this referee Donaghy in the NBA a couple of decades ago, you should realize he's actually throwing games for betting lines and so on. Well, again, once that happens, it actually destroys the fun of sports as well, because now it's not true.
It's a little bit like professional wrestling. It works because it's not true.
Right.
It's not real.
Right.
I mean, you can do slow-mo and you see the guy's it's 3 inches from his head, and he's doing that. He's doing the slow motion backwards move. So that works because it's built on the idea of this isn't real. It's fantasy.
Right.
But here's what I want to come back to, because I realize, because Zach and I have been having talk about these political things and the election, and were things rigged and not rigged, and was it the most secure election in history? And oh, by the way, that guy got fired after saying that. So it's this whole thing of who can you trust? Guys, there's only one person you can trust. It's true.
Yeah.
Jesus. I have come to testify to truth. Here's where I come back to over and over again, because our world, I realize I'm a little bit with Zach. I'm like, frankly, son, I don't trust much of anybody.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, it's okay in the sense that I'm not going to lose my sleep over it, because I can trust Jesus.
Yeah.
It's why I keep going back to him. After I read, because I'll read, the New York Times and other articles in the mornings, sometimes Fox, sometimes CNN, trying to get all sides of this thing. But I kind of will set my phone down and I'll say, now for some good news. And I'll literally pick up the Gospels.
Good.
Because I have to, with all that stuff that's going on, and intrigue and deceit, prospering and arrogance and superiority and all of that, I come back to Jesus and I'm like, the greatest person in all of the cosmos is humble and gentle and kind and compassionate and caring. And he says, this is what defines greatness. And I'm inspired again.
Yeah.
I'm stirred again to do what Jesus calls us to do, because he modeled it.
And you're centered again. This is where we have to, because again, we drift into controlling. We drift into thinking significance is related to how much we have or how many people that we get to tell what to do.
Oh, you and I might have been James and John had been cruising with Jesus in that day.
Yes. No, sons of thunder.
We're going to send Joy in. Hey, Mom, I want you to catch Jesus. Don't even think about David. We're not worried about David right now. But for Roger and Bruce, find out which of us and can we get on both sides of Jesus.
Yeah. It's exactly why I've thought I wouldn't want to live in that time.
We would be writing books called Worst Disciple Ever.
Yeah, if that's not outright rejecting, that's the sobering, reality. But we have to get centered. We have to keep going back to Jesus, who said, "I am the way, the truth,
I am
and the life."
I'm testifying.
I have to keep going back.
Jesus would over and over again say things like, "I tell you the truth.
Yes.
I tell you the truth. I tell you." Why did he have to say that? Because people were lying.
And comfortable with it. Again, that's that thing.
Causing deceit to prosper.
Right. When
comfortable with it.
And here's the deal.
Truth doesn't even matter. Whee!
Every time we choose to color the truth and tell a lie, we are causing deceit to prosper. It's fine that it's maybe even makes us feel better about ourselves to point to some political leader who's not being honest. This is where I get a little bit comical. I mean, I get a little...
Is this going to be challenging and or convicting to me? Because it possibly could be for other listeners.
I'll just see people have a certain outrage when a political leader lies. And I want to say, okay, I understand disappointment, but outrage at a certain point can come down to, I'm not that sort of person. I haven't done that.
Audacity.
I haven't done that kind of thing in my life. I haven't. Lies in the public square should always concern us, and we should speak out to those, and we should address them. And that's where I want to say, even to my Christian brothers and sisters, whether it's your candidate or the other candidate, if they're not telling the truth, we need to say something, because we can be causing deceit to prosper by not addressing where there are lies, where things that are not being told the truth, where we aren't we need to acknowledge that. We need to admit it. We need to say where we have not been, because that's the sobering reality.
Right.
Today, you or I will have the opportunity to cause deceit to prosper, or we can
testify to the truth.
Yeah.
As best we know. That's the other thing. Jesus was truth. So Jesus never struggled with truth.
Yeah.
But my heart's divided on this a lot. I realize I'm constantly having to sort of do a self-check on, man, is that really true? And again, I'm not trying to create an environment where we can't speak or do anything, but I realize it does cause me to pause. Maybe that's the word, and say, hey, is this really true? Or what am I pursuing? Is this true? Because I do believe, like you, that truth has consequences. There's a particular path that it can put you on, and that path has a destination. And I want to, as much as possible, like Jesus, testify to what's true. And that's why I keep coming back to the words of Jesus, the teaching of Jesus, the way of Jesus, because I know that to be true.
And what's sobering then is the other side of that. We've been talking about Jesus as truth, but you realize, what is our enemy called? What's one of his nicknames?
Of lies.
The father of lies.
The originator of.
The first liar.
The first liar.
And every other liar has his or her roots, meaning my lies are going back, which means in that moment, when I pick up a lie and say, I'm going to use a lie, whether I'm selling a car with a lie, whether I'm making a transaction with a lie, whether I'm trying to protect myself in my marriage with a lie,
or I'm increasing my influence with a lie, or power.
I'm getting more sales with a lie. Wherever I'm doing that, I'm doing the work of the enemy. I'm picking up his weapons.
That's his weapon. Yes.
Right. In other words, so I'm causing deceit to prosper, but that's the kind of environment I thought at some points that's about the only true power the enemy has is lies, but lies are powerful. Lies have great impact.
And that's a huge point. It's you could say it's the only weapon he really has.
Yeah.
But boy, is it a powerful one.
No, where you can deceive. And this is why we wrestle with it so much, because we know it's powerful. Even though we just know it's this tragedy. We're actually preying on people believing the best. We're actually preying on trust. Because honestly, in any culture, in any society, in any relationship, essential to that relationship is trust.
And otherwise, I was hearing, but I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard someone tell a story about a culture in a developing country where betrayal was considered honorable.
Yeah.
So if you could betray another person in a certain way to gain advantage, imagine if that's the way the world began to operate. It's a little bit like when I watched the movie The Man Who Invented Lying.
Yeah.
No one had ever lied before. And he goes to the bank and he goes to the teller and she's like, you have $200 in your account. He goes, ding. Oh, I think I had $1,600 in there. She goes, well, you must have. We'll just drop $1,400 in there for you. Here's your 16. I mean, because no one had ever.
Yeah.
When you lie, you're preying on people assuming the best, believing the best, doing the right thing, trusting. So this is why trusting Jesus is so important versus trusting the enemy of our souls, the father of lies, the accuser of the brethren.
Because at the very again, I was as you're talking, just thinking, okay, maybe the first lie we encounter is again the enemy interacting with Adam and Eve, right? And it's he's using the weapon he has.
You're not gonna die.
And look, God's holding out on you.
You need more power.
He's not looking out for your best interest. I am looking, and he hands them the lie of the lie. So he's using
the lie of the lie.
That it's going to benefit you.
Roger says so many deep things. Now I got to think about that. The lie of the lie.
So yeah, the lie of the lie is
it works.
That you're doing good.
But
it's benefit. Right. But you're eroding. This is where again you're eroding the very culture. You're eroding all relationships. All relationships hinge on trust. Here's the thing. The relationship between God and us hinges on trust. This is why Jesus is repeatedly calling us to trust him, because the lie is saying you can't trust him, or the lie is saying he ain't there, or the lie is saying he's not in your best interest. The lie is saying he forgot, he went to sleep, he's forsaken you. All these lies, you have to turn around and trust. The lies are undercutting trust. So every time we choose to play with the truth, I'm just going to massage it. I'm just going to, even there, the terms we're using, we don't call it lying.
Right.
I'm
gonna fudge. Where did that come from? What is fudging?
Turning lie into a candy.
Right. It's a toffee-like consistency.
Right. So it's
I guess it's moldable and pliable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Warning. So maybe, again, that's, if we're looking for a takeaway is.
You think our listeners are looking for takeaway? I think they are. Here's my takeaway.
They may be looking for us to end.
Your truth is going to be, I'm sorry, what you were saying was deeper than mine. I'm a simple person. I'm just like, for me, the takeaway is I trust Jesus, and I trust what he says, and I trust what he did, and I trust what he calls me to do, because he's the Father of truth.
Yeah.
He's the Father of the way.
Right.
He is truth.
And so in a climate where a lot, like my friend are saying, I don't know who to trust anymore. You were saying the other, talking to someone else who was saying the same thing. And really, when that happens, because I think you were talking about a friend who was saying, I don't know who to trust anymore, so I don't care.
Right.
Just cynical.
Right.
And I'm seeing that. And this is another one of those consequences, is just cynicism. But once that gets set into place, once people believe you can't trust, I think we talked about last time, a friend of mine was saying, almost every democracy goes downhill, begins to end when people believe they can't trust their elections anymore. Once trust, here's the thing, a lie is a time bomb, or it may be a landmine. It's sitting there under the surface, but it's going to take off. And right now, it looks like it got you out of something. Right now, it got you a better deal. Right now, it made you some more money. But in the end,
right now, it comforted you.
It's going to blow up. It's going to cost you. Yeah. It always does. The lie of the lie is there's no cost. There's no consequence. There's only benefit. Don't buy that lie.
That's a great finish, Raj.
Okay. Yeah, we should just cut right there. Just boom.
We're done. That's good.